Hello people, so we have an update here. My snap prediction came true, so obviously I'm going to be haha, I told you so, and gloat in my own magnificence. Only joking. But obviously I just want to summarise and put an end to this case against Boris by our good friend here, who is Marcus Ball. Now, I'm going to just quickly highlight, a very short video hopefully, look at this little thing, and then we're going to look at Joshua Rosenberg, who was outside the courtroom today and giving live updates via Twitter about what the arguments were, the legal arguments going through the court, and the judges who are taking a view on those arguments presented by Boris Johnson's defence, I suppose, maybe even the prosecution. I believe he moved court, which is what I'm going to highlight in just a second. But just to sum it up, this is Marcus Ball, who brought the case.
We estimate that we will eventually need £2 million. I've worked on this for 2 years now, and we're finally ready to do this thing. If people are willing to fund me, I am going to prosecute you. What do you think, Boris? Will they?
God, is it just me or this guy's really awkward and scary?
I love that guy's reaction. Oh, I'm so pleased I've discovered this little video that guy did. So props to Taya Tusin. So Taya Tusin, great vid, good find, well done for that. Now let's go straight into Joshua Rosenberg's little updates through the court here, and I'll just go through them. I'm not going to read them out, but I will just highlight something here that I noticed. Is bear in mind, right? So this case is remember, it's Marcus Ball versus Boris Johnson, okay? But now we have a new application here. This is Boris Johnson's legal team moving court and bringing a prosecution to be heard against the claim that's being made by Marcus Ball. Because if you notice here, he's got his own court number. He's got the Queen, so he's brought it in the name of the Queen, which is where the common law is. The Queen on application of Boris Johnson versus Westminster Magistrates Court. So he's actually suing he's actually bringing a case against the court themselves. But I believe this must be some sort of administrative corporation that's been put in place to administrate justice or criminal law on behalf of the government. So he's basically, the Queen has gone against the agents of the government for allowing this prosecution to go ahead. See if there's anyone here. It's the same thing. Yeah, so he's actually going against the court decision, not against Marcus Ball. So basically saying, look, Marcus Ball can do what he wants, but this court has acted in error, and we're going to bring a case against him, against the court, not Marcus Ball. Marcus Ball's not even got an issue. So that means that there may be a case to answer, but bringing it via the magistrates court might be an issue. If he brings it, the Queen versus Boris Johnson, and brings the claim that he believes that Boris Johnson lied, he would have to bring that again in the Queen's name against Boris Johnson, and then he'd be able to bring it through to the trial by jury, and the jury will be able to see the merits of his case. And this is where the fine minutiae of how you approach the court systems and where you end up getting filtered down is that the error at the magistrates court is now mean that, as it stands, Marcus Ball's case can't go through the way that he's done. The doors that he's gone through have been closed to him. But the door that is open for all of us, including Boris Johnson, in order to get the proper justice, the common law, to come down and correct errors of judges. Remember, this is a judge made this error. Someone who's trained and qualified and pursued a legal career has now been found that the process was correct, but the conclusions that he made were in error. So that's basically a good example of what Carl Lentz would say is it a claim of consonance? I believe it is what it's called, where you change court. But he's brought his case in the Queen's name. So I'll just scroll up here. You can have a read. But essentially, the legal arguments from there was two. There was I think it was Sharpstone, and I believe it was Derbyshire. Made some really interesting points in obviously a very, very kind of loophole manner, attacking the very meaning of the definition of was it bad practice in a public office or something like that. It's essentially it's a form of malfeasance, is what the case was. And she brought up a very good point: is that the claim that was being used in the indictment was very much a claim for the government to use against their own MPs. It's not really a claim that a private prosecution can bring up. So it's kind of like trying to bring a claim of like a gross misconduct. You work for McDonald's and an outsider, member of the public, is trying to bring a claim of gross misconduct against you. So it kind of doesn't really fit the mould in relation to what the legislation is actually originally designed for. So there's a little kind of, okay, this is always the danger now. Okay, you can read and you think you can understand and you think you can interpret our legal codes, but as an outsider, when you start messing around in this legal framework, this legal system, you think you know what the words mean, you think you know the context, and you employ these legal buffs to take it in on your behalf. Presumably, they should know what their contexts are, but they're only doing what their client wishes, and that's to bring a case against Boris Johnson for which he's crowdfunded. So I can see, well, we're going to bring a case. They may have even known that it was going to fail because of the motivations behind it, but alas, the only way they're going to get paid is if they perform a service for our good friend Marcus Ball. So yeah, Derbyshire QC did a really good job, it seems, at probing the questions, probing the statutes, and raising the arguments and the real minutiae and the points of law and the finding of facts in relation to what was going on with granting the summons. Which actually I don't think the summons was, I don't know, I think it said somewhere here that the summons wasn't really granted, but it was like a pre-summons. I don't know, but anyway, like I said, it's done and dusted now. Essentially this thing is dead in the water. As I predicted, it was a nonsense. It was just a way really to, when you crowdfund a legal pot of money to perform a service, the only way they can have access to that money is to perform a legal service. Obviously, sometimes you win some, you lose some, and in this case, obviously, they lost, and that was obviously, in my opinion, that was always going to happen. And Bojo can get on with trying to win the prime ministership of the Conservative Party and the government. Things about no precedent in this kind of scope of this. There was all kinds of little minutiae. It's an interesting read if you just want to go through and pause the screen. He really did put the interesting questions up. Alright, and this goes on to the next case. But there we are. You should have it all there that you need. If the judiciary release the opinions directly from the court, which I haven't had an update on that actually. Let me just see if it is. If they have, the judiciary might sometimes give us a update, but I haven't received a comment about that, so presumably it's not been done. But yeah, if it does happen, I'll let you know. But that's it. It's game over. Marcus Ball, try again. Who knows? Maybe another 5 million is what he needs to get justice. 5 million. He might get it all the way to the High Court then, and then it'll get kicked out.